no mulch, no problem. Hey YouTube, it's Matt Sargent with the Old Medicine Farm. Today we're going to talk about starting a food forest without mulch. If you've watched any how to start a food forest videos on YouTube, and there's some awesome ones, I highly recommend this series by James Pragioni. I'm sure I totally butchered his name, but he's got a great how to start a food forest, super valuable information. However, not everyone has access to abundant wood chips. Where I used to live in Kentucky, you could get them, but they cost an arm and a leg, or you had to have a dump truck to go pick them up. So unless you had a dump truck and you had to pay someone with a dump truck, that costs a lot. Where I live, people value wood chips and they cost a lot, and I can't get anyone to deliver up here. So one, I don't have the money to buy them. Two, no one wants to beat up their trucks by driving our lovely road up to our place. So is that going to stop me from starting a food forest? No, because one thing to keep in mind, no mulch, no problem. The whole philosophy about putting down a whole bunch of wood chips and kind of doing the Ruth Stout preparation for a food forest or a forest garden is that by putting down a thick layer of wood chips, one, you're smothering out weeds, two, you're creating a fungal environment for the more perennial style plants you have in the system. But you don't need to do that. You can work with succession and plan on using a lot of chop and drop, and you'll still get that good, healthy fungal environment. What I've done, if you take a look around me, remember, if you've watched any of my other videos, the hillsides here in between the terraces, those are where the more perennials are going to go. The trees, the shrubs, the herbaceous plants. And yeah, we'll have herbs growing, definitely herbs growing on the flat parts of the terraces, but that's going to be more, the traditional crop style. We have an alley cropping setup within this food forest. But you can see on the hillside, I've planted red clover. Red clover is awesome. It's got medicinal properties that you can use. Always consult an herbalist before you use anything. But it's also a leguminous plant, so it fixes nitrogen. So in my chop and drop system, you can look here, we've got red clover next to the comfrey. The comfrey is next to some lupine and some various weeds that are popping up underneath this crabapple tree. So I chop and drop the clover so it doesn't outcompete the comfrey. That feeds the comfrey some nitrogen as the roots of the clover die back to match the pruning of the clover. The comfrey grows up, we chop and drop the clover feeds the aronia berry or chokeberry behind it. The chokeberry is also a nitrogen fixer. When it gets big enough, we chop and drop that. It all feeds the apple tree. They're all part of the same system. Oh, and the lupines, they're a nitrogen fixing plant too. So the cool thing about that is not only are you, avoiding the thing of mulch, but you can see in this really thick clover, there's not a lot of weeds. So I still have my weed suppression. And what's even better about the living ground cover as opposed to a wood chip mulch is by having living roots in the soil, you are actively feeding the microbes in the soil and giving them something, whereas having just wood chips down on the ground is more of a habitat for the microbes. Yes, some of them and some fungi will help break them down, but there's actually no exudates being made, and living plants excrete these exudates, which are carbons and sugars that feed various soil microorganisms. So by having a living ground cover, you're really jump starting your soil microbiology, and buying a whole bunch of clover seed or another appropriate ground cover is generally a lot cheaper and easier to spread than a bunch of wood chips. Another part of the no mulch, no problem approach to my food forest, my forest garden, you can see in the 2 terraces that I have built, I have them thickly seeded with annual cover crops. And today we're going to terminate one and plant another in this upper terrace. We're going to be using a roller crimper. But if you can't afford a roller crimper, I've got one for my Grillo. I love it. If you can't afford one, check out this video I did for ABC Acres And it's more about managing grasses for your fence lines, but you can use the same tool to terminate annual cover crops. This annual cover crop right here is a rye and vetch mix. It's seeded really dense, and you can see there's really no weeds coming out. I'm a little late because some of the rye is starting to form seeds. That said, if I get rye as a weed in this cropping system, I'm not super concerned. It's pretty easy to pull out. But now that this is mature, we're going to use the crimping action to lay this all down as a mulch. Before we do that, we're going to broadcast some seed. I've got a mixture of daikon, purple top turnip, oats, and peas, all of which should winter kill. But if it doesn't look like we're going to get our first hard frost before things are starting to set seed, we'll just roller crimp it again. And as the roots die back after the crop is terminated, that's going to add organic matter below the soil surface, which is great. And then we'll have a nice thick mulch to plant crops into next spring. So let's take a look at that. Great, now we got some, the second round of cover crop sown. As I'm saying, growing your own mulch is generally a lot easier than getting wood chips and spreading them, and it has the benefits of living plants feed the other plants and feed the soil. I alluded to using the roller crimper with my lovely 14 horsepower Grillo. That said, the Grillo has decided not to cooperate, having some issues with the fuel line. Thought I had it sorted out, did a whole bunch of mowing the other day, and now it's starting and dying down. Definitely have something blocking the fuel line, and need to get this rolled and crimped, and can't seem to troubleshoot that. So I'm going to do this the old fashioned way. Instead of 14 horses with the Grillo, we get like maybe a half of a horse with me. You get to watch me. This is still going to be easier than wheelbarrow carting around a whole bunch of wood chips, but you'll get an idea of how the roller crimper works. Like I said, check out that video with the little stomping tool I made when I was working at ABC Acres. I don't think in that one I had a piece of angle iron attached because it was just to lay down grass temporarily for hot wire fences, but same idea, 2x4 with the rope up to your waist. If you bolt it on an angle iron, you get the same effect as this roller crimper, and then the weight on the roller crimper is what terminates your plants, creating a mulch. So for no-till gardening, the crimping is a great way to terminate the plants as long as you let them grow up mature enough. You can't do it when they're young plants with grasses such as rye or oats. You want it when they're in the boot stage because you don't want them forming seeds like my rye already kind of is. If you got flowering or legumes, you want to roll it right as soon as they start flowering. This vetch isn't flowering yet, so hopefully it'll terminate, but the rye that it's planted with is past the boot stage and starting to set seed. So I want to kill this and shut it down before any of that seed becomes mature and viable. That said, like I said earlier, if it does become viable seed, I can deal with a little bit of rye. I'll still have living plants in the system. It's pretty easy to pull. There won't be a whole lot of it. So let's get this thing rolled. Not gonna lie, that's a workout. That thing is designed to be hauled by the Grillo. That said, the weight similar to a full wheelbarrow full of wood chips. I made 2 passes down and back twice, might end up doing a third. Try putting a little more weight on it. This thing is designed to have barbell weights right in there instead of sandbags there. I'm broke, I can't afford barbell weights. Sandbags will work, probably just need a third. Still convinced even without the Grillo that doing this would be easier than spreading wood chips with a wheelbarrow. That would have been 5 or 6 trips with a wheelbarrow, 5 or 6 wheelbarrow loads full. I'd have to shovel everything into the wheelbarrow, haul it, dump it, rake it, repeat. I'm sure you know the drill. It's one of the reasons I like to grow my own mulch. It's a lot easier when your equipment's working properly. hopefully you've liked this video. Let me know what you're thinking. Do you grow your own mulch? What more do you want to see in this channel? Like, share, subscribe, and until next time, happy growing.